Hello, class. My name is Logan Miller, and I am a senior at Kennesaw State University, and I am studying software engineering. I am here today because I'm going to teach you all about databases. We're going to talk about what a database is, some examples of databases, and why they are important. Believe it or not, databases are used all the time with tons of applications that you use, whether you realize it or not. After my presentation today, we're going to be doing an activity which involves natural selection, and then we're going to incorporate the concepts that are used in databases. This is one of our more complex kits, so you may want to break this kit into 2 lessons for your class. Okay, let's get started. So what exactly is a database? Well, a database is a collection of organized information that is stored typically electronically in a computer system. Databases are controlled by a database management system. A database management system, simply put, is just an application that allows users to retrieve, update, and manage the information in a database. Most databases used today are relational databases. What this means is that the information in the database is organized as a set of tables with columns and rows. This allows to easily organize and retrieve information from the database. Databases are used every day by just about every company. All your favorite applications, games, and social media platforms use databases. A proper database is a fundamental aspect of any business because every business needs a way to store, retrieve, and analyze information. Your student information that is stored at your school can be stored in a database. Your grades, attendance, previous courses completed are all examples of information that your school may store in a database. A way for a store to keep track of its inventory is by using a database. When Google stores your pictures, videos, documents, and emails, it is doing this by utilizing a database. Snapchat is another company that uses databases. Snapchat stories and saved snaps are all going to be stored within a database. My last example is Facebook. How do you think Facebook uses databases? Well, some ways that Facebook uses a database would be to store your pictures, posts, messages, and friends list. If we have a piece of information that we want, what do we do with it? Well, we store it in a database so we can later retrieve it. What do we do when we have multiple pieces of information? Well, we also store that information in a database, but we do it by storing it in a table. Remember how I mentioned relational databases earlier? That is exactly what a relational database does. It stores information in a row and column format, also known as a table. Think of an Excel spreadsheet to get a mental image. By organizing information into a table in a database, it makes it easier for us to locate information and access specific information we need. Without this type of organization, the database would become very messy very quickly. So, once information is neatly organized into tables in a database, how do we retrieve it? Well, we retrieve the information by using SQL queries in our database management system. So, what is an SQL query? Probably sounds like a pretty strange term, but it is actually relatively simple. SQL is a programming language used by nearly all relational databases to query information. Queries are a way to retrieve the information you want from a database. It's a question or an inquiry about a set of information. A query asks the database, does any information in your database meet this criteria? And if there is information that meets this criteria, the query returns that information to the user. Unfortunately, databases don't speak English. If they did, it could probably make our lives a lot easier. However, this just isn't the case. So that is why we use SQL queries. SQL queries allow us to communicate to the database so it knows exactly what we are trying to do and what we want. You could think of an SQL query as asking a question to a friend. If we ask them too broad of a question or too specific of a question, we may not receive the answer we are looking for. The same applies to databases. If we ask our database too broad of a question, it may return too much information. If we ask our database too specific of a question, it may not return any information at all. This last bullet point is an example of a search we may want to do with the database that stores student information. We ask the database to return students who have a name that starts with T and a birthday in July. In your class, do any of you fall into this category? There may be a few students that do actually fall into this category, but it's also very possible that none of you do. If none of y'all fall into this category, this could be an example of how the criteria for this search is too specific. It needs to be a little more broad, such as, are there any students who have a name that start with T? Or are there any students that have a birthday in July? By separating this into two different searches, I'm able to broaden my results and get more information. By making a query more or less specific, you are able to control the amount of information that you receive from the database. Databases are very important, and we rely on them on a daily basis. But why exactly are databases so important? Well, databases store important information for us, which we're going to need. With the database, we can retrieve information really quickly and then adjust our searches for specific information. As a result, we have access to a vast amount of information. This makes our lives easier, more efficient, and less stressful. For our activity today, we are going to play a game that incorporates the concepts that we just covered about databases with natural selection. Each student is going to create a creature, and then we are going to find out which creatures can survive on the foreign planets. In our activity, we will search a large number of traits and find creatures with the ideal survival traits for each foreign planet. While we are playing the activity, please keep these questions in your mind because we will have a recap after the first planet. What could be a database and what could be a query in this game? Okay, let's get started. With this activity, we recommend that the class breaks into groups of 5 or as close to 5 as possible. Each group will receive a keychain similar to this one and should have 25 key tags with 5 carabiners. Each key tag will represent a unique trait for their creature, and each carabiner will be used to hold the 5 traits that they choose. Once the students have formed groups and each group has a keychain, they should now remove the 5 carabiners and 25 key tags and lay them flat on their desk. Once the students have removed all the carabiners and key tags from their keychain and have laid them on their desk and organized all the traits according to color, it should look something like this. So each student is going to get a carabiner, and they're going to select traits from each category for their creature. Each student can only select one trait of each color for their creature, and everyone is going to take turns selecting one trait at a time. So I am now going to demonstrate how each student is going to build their creature. So I have these 5 different categories, and each color represents something different. Black stands for respiratory, green represents travel, white represents vision, red represents its diet, and blue represents defense. Here is a quick display of all the traits for the different creatures so you can get a better view of all of them. So I'm going to first start by grabbing a carabiner, and I'm going to select something from the black category. I'm going to pick this key tag right here, which is oxygen through skin. So my creature is going to breathe oxygen, and it's going to do it through its skin. I'm now going to pick something from the blue category, and I'm going to pick camo. So my creature is going to use camouflage as its defense. So now let's move on to the green category, which is travel. And I'm going to pick this key tag right here. This is flying, so my creature is going to get by, or is going to travel by flying. The red category is diet, so I'm going to go ahead and pick a key tag from here. And I have my key tag for this one is fish. So my creature is going to eat fish for its diet. Lastly, I have the vision category. I'm going to go ahead and pick this top key tag right here, which says ultraviolet. So I have now picked 5 different key tags and I've placed them on my carabiner. And these 5 key tags are going to represent the traits for my creature that I've just created. Each student should now take turns selecting traits until every student in the class has created a creature. Once every student has created a creature, we can now begin our game. So before we get started, we just have a few simple game rules that we need to go over. So at the beginning of each game, all the students are going to stand up. As we go through the ideal survival traits for each planet, if your creature cannot survive, you must sit down. Once we've gone through all the ideal survival traits, all the students that are left standing at the end of the game are going to be the winners. All right, let's get started. Here is our first foreign planet. Planet number 1 is a hard-packed sand desert. It's extremely hot, has 2 suns, no standing water, it's oxygen-based, there's predators that are immune to toxicants, and it lacks fish and red meat creatures. As this planet has 2 suns, it would be hard for creatures with night vision to survive. So if you have night vision, please sit down. This planet is sandy, and as such, if you have double eyelids to protect your eyes, you get to survive. As it is vast and has 2 suns, if you have ultraviolet eyesight or farsight, you also get to remain standing. As the air isn't littered with debris or anything, if you have echolocation, you also get to remain standing. As this is a desert planet, if you breathe via water, you're going to have a tough time surviving. So all creatures who have fresh water or salt water, please sit down. If you breathe gas or oxygen, there is an abundance of that in the atmosphere, so you can remain standing. If you breathe oxygen through the skin, you can also remain standing. As this is a desert planet, there is not standing water and no large vegetation to climb. So if you have swimming or climbing for your mode of transportation, please sit down. This climate allows for users to tunnel under the heat, fly through the sky, and jump across the vast landscape. If you have these traits, please remain standing. On this planet, the predators are immune to toxic defenses. So if you have toxic as your defense, please sit down. As this is a hot planet, if you have fur, you won't be able to survive. So if you have fur, please sit down. A hard exoskeleton and spikes are effective against these predators. So if you have either of these defenses, please remain standing. If you have camouflage, then you can hide well on this planet, so you get to survive as well. Please remain standing if you have camo as your defense. As this is a desert, it naturally doesn't have much of large life or underwater creatures. So if you require red meat or fish to survive, please sit down. If you eat bugs, roots, or fruit, you get to survive, as that food can be found in the desert. So if you have a diet of roots, bugs, or fruit, please remain standing. Okay, so we have gone through all the survival traits for this planet. So anyone who is still standing is the winner. Congratulations. Before we move on to the next planet, I would like to do a quick recap over the concepts of databases and how they apply to this game. So earlier I asked you these 2 questions. What do you think would be considered the database in this game? And what do you think would be the SQL query? Well, the database in this game is the collection of every student's creature that was created. Each individual creature that you have made would be considered a single object within the database. Each planet's survival traits would make up the criteria for the SQL query in this game. As we go through the game and search for the best survival traits, this would be considered the SQL query. We search through the database, the collection of your creatures, using the planet's survival traits, the criteria for the query, and it returns the creatures that meet the specific criteria, the results of the query. This is exactly how a database works. We are just using natural selection as an example to demonstrate this process. The goal of this game is to strengthen your knowledge of how databases work and allow you to see that a database is more than just storing information. Now that we have done our quick recap, let's move on to the second planet. This planet has frozen mountains, heavy snowstorms, it's always dark, and it's a big icy block that has no water. There's gases including oxygen, has predators with powerful jaws and immunities. The planet also only consists of red meat creatures. Since there are heavy snowstorms and it is always dark on this foreign planet, if you have echolocation or ultraviolet, please sit down. If you have night vision, farsight, or double eyelids, you will survive on this planet and you can remain standing. On this foreign planet, there is no water. The planet itself is a huge icy block. If you have fresh water or salt water, please sit down. Oxygen and other gases are in abundance, so if you have oxygen through lungs, oxygen through skin, or gases other than oxygen, you will survive on this planet and you may remain standing. The heavy snowstorms make it impossible to fly on this foreign planet, so if you have flying, please sit down. Also, since there's no water, if you have swimming, you need to also please sit down. If you have jumping, tunneling, or climbing, you will survive on this planet and you may remain standing. The predators on this planet have powerful jaws and immunities. Toxic and exoskeleton defenses leave your creatures vulnerable to the predators. If you have toxic or exoskeleton, please sit down. If you have selected fur, spikes, or camo, then you will survive and you may remain standing. Only red meat creatures exist on this planet. If you have red meat as your diet, then you can survive on this planet and you may remain standing. If you have fish, roots, fruits, or bugs as your diet, then you will not survive and you must sit down. At this point, anyone who is still standing is the winner of this round. Congratulations. We have now moved on to our third foreign planet. This planet is water-filled, windy, has Earth-like day and night cycles. There's salt and fresh water. There's gases excluding oxygen. There's predators that have powerful jaws, and there's no fruit or bugs that can be found. Since this planet is so windy, if you have echolocation, you will have a hard time surviving. If you have echolocation, please sit down. Since there are nights on this planet, if you have ultraviolet, you won't be able to survive. So please sit down if you have ultraviolet. If you have double eyelids, night vision, or farsight, you will survive on this planet and may remain standing. There is no oxygen on this planet, so if you have oxygen through skin or oxygen through lungs, please sit down. If you have gases other than oxygen, fresh water, or salt water, you will survive on this planet and may remain standing. Since this planet is water-filled, if you have jumping, tunneling, or climbing, you will not survive on this planet and you need to please sit down. Swimming and flying can survive on this planet, so if you have either of these traits, you may remain standing. Between the water-filled planet mixed with it being windy, if you have fur, you will not be able to survive on this planet. If you have an exoskeleton, you are also vulnerable to the predators with powerful jaws and will not survive. So if you have fur or exoskeleton, please sit down. If you have camo, toxic, or spikes, you will survive on this planet and may remain standing. There are no fruit or bugs on this planet. If you have fruit or bugs as your diet, please sit down. If you have fish, red meat, or roots, you will survive on this planet and can remain standing. Congratulations, we've gone through all the survival traits. If you are still standing, you are the winner of this round. We are now on our fourth foreign planet. This planet has a rainforest, it is constantly raining, most light is blocked out, there's fresh water, the atmosphere is pure oxygen, and there's a forest that is so diverse that defenses of all kinds have their place. There's also vast amounts of food for all different kinds of creatures. So the constant rain makes it almost impossible to see using echolocation. So if you have echolocation, you will not survive and you need to please sit down. If you have ultraviolet, you will also not survive because most light is blocked out on this planet. If you have ultraviolet, please sit down. If you have farsight, night vision, or double eyelids, you will survive on this planet and may remain standing. On this planet, the atmosphere is pure oxygen. So if you have gases other than oxygen for respiratory, you will not survive and you need to please sit down. There is also no salt water on this planet, so if you have salt water, you also need to sit down. If you have oxygen through lungs, oxygen through skin, or fresh water, you will survive and may remain standing. Any trait under travel will allow your creature to survive on this planet. Climbing, flying, jumping, tunneling, and swimming are all traits that will allow your creature to survive. No one has to sit down for this trait. Since this planet has a forest that is extremely diverse, all defenses will allow your creature to survive on this planet. No one has to sit down for this trait either. The planet has a vast amount of food, and all types of diet will flourish here. Because of this, no one has to sit down for this trait either. So we have gone through all the survival traits for this planet, so anyone who is still standing is the winner. Congratulations. After going through the survival traits for the fourth planet, there is a high chance that a lot of y'all are still standing. So we can tie this back to SQL queries. This planet's survival traits is an example of a query that is too broad, and in return, it returns too many results. Alright, we have now moved on to our fifth and final planet. Planet number 5 is a rock and volcano planet with extremely high gravity. There's high winds and volcanic debris. It is very dark from the volcanic clouds and debris. There's no clean water, there's gases excluding oxygen, and the biggest predator here isn't a creature, but the volcanoes. Small foods are the best foods, only root and bugs occupy this planet. This planet is extremely dark from volcanic clouds and debris. If you have ultraviolet, please sit down. The atmosphere is also riddled with volcanic debris, so if you have echolocation, you also need to sit down. If you have double eyelids, night vision, or farsight, you will survive on this planet and may remain standing. On this planet, there is no clean water. If you have fresh water or salt water, please sit down. There is also only gases excluding oxygen. If you have oxygen through skin and oxygen through lungs, please sit down. If you have gases other than oxygen, you will survive and may remain standing. Since there is no clean water, if you have swimming, please sit down. If you have flying, you will not survive since the gravity is so high on this planet. So if you have flying, please sit down. If you have tunneling, climbing, or jumping, you will survive and may remain standing. Because of the harsh, rigid climate here on this foreign planet, only creatures with exoskeletons can survive. If you have exoskeleton, you will survive and may remain standing. If you have camo, fur, spikes, or toxic, you will not survive and need to please sit down. This planet has only roots and bugs as its food source. If you have fish, fruit, or red meat as your diet, you will not survive and need to please sit down. If you have selected roots or bugs, you will survive and may remain standing. Alright, so we have gone through all the survival traits for this planet. So at this point, anyone that is still standing is the winner. Congratulations. So after going through the fifth planet, there is a high chance that no one actually had the survival traits to survive on this planet. So this planet's survival traits is an example of a query that is too narrow. It does not return enough information. So that is all that I have for y'all today. I hope y'all enjoyed learning about databases, and I hope y'all enjoyed playing this activity. Thank you for your time, and take care.